Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for joining us for this gathering of Israelis together with Jewish activists and scholars from Jewish communities in Latin America. My name is Roni Stauber. I'm the head of the Goldstein-Goren Diaspora Research Center at Tel Aviv University. And the aim of this meeting is to hear, share, and discuss experiences and challenges that Jewish communities and individuals have had since October the 7th. This is the second meeting of this kind. The previous one was with Jewish activists, both from the United States and Europe. Four academic research centers at Tel Aviv University Faculty of Humanities organized this panel, and as well as the previous one. The Koret Center for Jewish Civilization, the Goldstein-Goren Diaspora Research Center, the Center for the Study of Contemporary European Jewry, and the Irwin Cotler Institute for Democracy, Human Rights, and Justice. I want to thank the staff members who helped organizing these events and my colleagues, Professor Judit and Professor Youval Rotman. Youval Rotman is the initiator and the living spirit behind this project. 107 days in Israel, we count every day of the war, have passed since this day, the Black Shabbat, a date which will live in infamy in Israel's history. The trauma is, of course, first and foremost of the remnants of this savage attack, whose families were brutally murdered, and those miserable families whose loved ones are held hostages. However, the general feeling is that the whole Israeli society passed a severe trauma. The attack raised some fundamental, and I would say even existential questions about our trust in the IDF and the government, about what we see as a severe breach in the agreement between the citizen and the army, the feeling of so many people that they were abandoned for so many hours, the fact that the soldiers who eventually entered the kibbutzim and the moshavim and fought bravely, and that the IDF occupied most of the Gaza Strip cannot change the trauma, particularly when so many hostages are still kept in horrible conditions in Gaza. At the same time, however, we feel proud of the strength and the solidarity shown by the Israeli society, which I think gives a real hope for the future of democratic Israel. Almost simultaneously, we have witnessed a dramatic increase of anti-Semitic manifestations. Most disturbing were the accounts of the intimidated Jewish students on some of the most prestigious campuses in the United States. While Jews participated in pro-Israel demonstrations, there were numerous reports about Jews and communities who feel unsecured, and about Jewish individuals who decided not to wear kippah in public and to remove any Jewish signs. Facing the daily dramatic events and daily casualties of young soldiers, it is only natural that we are concentrating here on what is happening here. And we don't know enough about how the events affected the Jewish communities, particularly the small communities, how much they suffered from anti-Semitism, how much the events affected their life, their well-being, their sense of security, and their attitude towards Israel. So I hope that this and future meetings will help us better understanding the situation the Jewish communities are facing in this unprecedented crisis and encourage Jewish communities to share experiences and methods of reaction when solidarity is so important today among Jews worldwide. So now I'm turning to my colleague, giving the floor to my colleague and friend, Professor Youval Rotman. Youval.
Thank you, Roni, Professor Stauber. Buenas tardes, good evening, or buenos dias, in fact, in Latin America. Thank you all for joining us in this panel dedicated to the challenges the Jewish communities are facing in the state of the current war. I'm Youval Rotman, historian at the Department of Jewish History at Tel Aviv University and the academic director of the Koret Center for Jewish Civilization, recently established in Tel Aviv University together with the Anu Museum of Jewish Peoplehood. As Roni said, 107 days ago, an unprecedented atrocious attack and massacre that Hamas inflicted on the Israelis and non-Israelis has changed our reality, and I think it's changed our reality forever. More than 3 months have passed, and for many of us, the nightmare is still ongoing, and its outcome is still unknown. This war and the atrocities it inflicted brought back memories of the Jewish past and make them real. The context is, as we know, as we learned, different, but unconsciously and consciously, sometimes, we linked it to the Jewish past. To the terrible atrocities from the Jewish past. Yet, whether we think we link it or not to the Jewish past, the atrocities of this war and the reaction that it receives in the international public have marked the lives of Israelis and Jews around the world in a way that call for examination and action and rethinking. Whether this will be done locally or internationally is a matter of choice. Yet Jews around the world are finding themselves, for the first time in many years, I think, facing a common reality and asking common questions, similar questions or not similar questions about themselves and their future. This in itself is a great challenge that calls for action. At Tel Aviv University, we thought about constructing a framework to share and discuss the ways we are experiencing this war around the Jewish world, whether we belong to a local Jewish community or an international Jewish community, or do not belong to any community or even not Jewish, but feel inflicted. In fact, this is one of the results of this war. It forces us to rethink the place of Judaism today and in the future, and its relationship and attitude to the state of Israel. It opens a new contemporary perspective to look at the here and now, a perspective we may not like, but a one that confronts us with urgent questions. And I think that the current situation raises many questions. I will state a few. What kind of tensions and problems the war has evoked in our personal and communal immediate life? What is the common and non-common effects of the war on our local communities? How do we experience this locally? In what way do current events and the echoes they receive change their relationship to Israel around the world and also for Israelis? And Roni has said the new reality of us as Israelis and the new perception of the state in view of the war. Are we dealing with universal transformation in the way Jews in their countries define and express their Jewishness and their relations with Israel, not only in US campuses, but also for instance, in small communities or sporadically? Where do we believe the line is drawn between a legitimate criticism of Israeli politics and anti-Semitism in Israel and around the world, and what can be done to draw it more clearly, correctly? And also regarding our activism, in what ways can Jewish communities shape the aftermath of the current situation and its memory? Can we have an active role in the way the events will be recorded and remembered? And how can this affect our position in view of the events right now? So in giving ourselves the active role of shaping the future. Can this help us, right, to perceive ourselves now at the situation here and now? I can attest for my role in the battle for the redemption of the hostages, that it gave me and my friends first of, you know, not just an active role, but a feeling that we're doing something. So this and other pertinent questions, not only they are pertinent not only for our way of life right now, but also for the future. And we need to think about them and think about them together. Not only Jews, but anyone who is engaged with the current state and the future of the Jewish civilization. So as Roni said, this is the second panel that we are organizing to bring together different views from different places of the world. And this time it's dedicated entirely to Jewish communities in Latin America, the way they experience the war, and the view about what can and needs to be done. We hope that you will find in this discussion not only a framework of sharing views, but also a framework to rethink together the challenges that the Jewish civilization is confronting today. I will present briefly our four distinguished speakers, and we'll give them the floor. So our first speaker is Professor Judit Bokser Liwerant. How do I pronounce your name? Sorry, Bokser. Liwerant, who is the director of the Graduate School of Political and Social Sciences at the National Autonomous University.
Judit, you have to unmute yourself if you want to comment on the way to pronounce your last name.
Thank you very much. I said that I am accustomed to spell my name in Mexico or in Argentina, but now in Israel it's Liwerant, L-I-W-E.
Okay, so Professor Judit Bokser Liwerant is the director of the Graduate School of Political and Social Sciences at the National Autonomous University of Mexico and the head of the committee of the Universidad of Mexico. Mr. Sergio Napchan is the director of the Jewish Confederation of Brazil. Dr. Valeria Navarro Rosenblatt researches and teaches at the Studies School of Political Science at the Universidad Diego Portales and Universidad Autonoma de Chile. And Dr. Adrian Krupnik is a researcher at the Goldstein-Goren Diaspora Research Center and the Minerva Center for Human Rights at Tel Aviv University. So, Judith, please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Just let me correct, probably I should have sent you, but I used to be the director of the graduate school where I carried a very important academic reform. I'm now a distinguished professor of political science at the UNAM, and I'm heading director and editor of the Mexican Journal of Political and Social Sciences. So I welcome this encounter, and I think that times are extremely difficult. We started to exchange some ideas, complexity, uncertainty, vulnerability, all seem to converge in a shared feeling that we are into critical times. Critical time is the way there is a change in the way people see and situate themselves in the world, a sort of paradigm shift in the current experience and its interpretations. There is a growing polarization and as an extended characteristic of today's world that may reach us, I would say, as a people, as a nation, as a state, diaspora, and Israel. So we need to amass efforts to understand the present, I agree, and probably try to see how we put some constant of a interactive dialogical task. We deal today with Latin America, as you said. However, in the current globalized world, the local, the national, the regional, and the global dimensions intersect in a transnational scenario in which processes cross borders and link processes. So I would suggest first that coming encounters should cross people coming from different regions, right? And try to connect Europe, the United States, Latin America, etc. So in the case we are dealing, there is an inner diversity of the global Jewish world, its regions, countries, voluntary communities, the sovereign state. So to understand the novelty of our current time, I suggest really to cross experiences. In itself, Latin America is a diverse territorial, geopolitical, economic, social, multi-ethnic, and cultural entity. We talk about one Latin America as an ideal, the reality is diverse, and the global Jewish world, for its part, has its own diversity. If we attend our region, our, I would say, continent, Latin America, there is a different way of approaching question of legitimacy, equality, diversity, the life of Jews as citizens and as members of a community. And in general, I would say that Israel has been today, even though the changing patterns of this relation, Israel has been an identity builder, an identification referent, has been and is, and a builder of organized Jewish life. So I would say its strength is both ideal, ideological, spiritual, concrete, together and paralleling a multi-centered Jewish world in a transnational diaspora that connects in between communities, not necessarily through Israel. So today challenges are really very, I would say, very compelling. The first one, as you said, October 7. I think that's a common experience to the Jewish world, shocking, dramatic impact, and so the war. The nature and magnitude of October 7 and the war, as every war that you may qualify it just, unjust, defensive, not necessarily, but has always negative outcomes, human life, death, sorrow. And I think that October 7 and the current world met the communities and Israeli society amidst divisions and solidarity, polarization, and the shared feeling of a shared fate, trust and delusion. As you refer starting, there is the state, there is the questioning of government policies, there is the admiration for the cohesion of society. There is some sort of divergence in between leadership, representation, and dissent. And we ask ourselves, this will bring to weakening or enhancing the relations. I want to deal briefly, I'll try to do it with two aspects that you mentioned. One, the difference in between anti-Semitism, critique of government of Israel, anti-Zionism, and its expression in Mexico and Latin America. First, very concrete, the reaction of Latin American governments has been different. And today what we see that there has been a very strong correlation in between the support of the governments in the Ukraine-Russia war to Ukraine and to Israel versus the support towards Russia and Hamas. This is a clear cut that we may refer or define both in terms of left and right, of authoritarian or democratic regimes, right? So the support has come mainly from center and center-right governments. Left governments, so self-defined as such, have support Russia and supported now. And here comes the first not only semantic, but ideological and strategic differentiation, Hamas or the Palestine people. And here, as far as I can see and say, not only in Mexico, but all over in Latin America, in the United States and Europe also, there is an overlapping in between Hamas and the Palestine people. And closer to that, Hamas is still seen mainly as a liberation movement and not a terror organization, right? A brief 2 words about the Mexican Jewish community, right? It has a very high density of structural, institutional, and collective life, right? So the highest rate of affiliation, education, attendance to a very robust and strong educational system, the number of trips to Israel, etc. It has an inner division in between subethnic, religious, political, and economic belonging, and the spaces shared, if not building consensus, to build consensus, they guarantee a collaborative, united effort, mainly facing the representation versus the government. And here, what we can see is that Mexico represents a very interesting case. While the government has entered and has reached through election the government, through a leftist and democratization claim, its nature, and that's very important to the rest of Latin American countries too, its populism, its populist profile has canceled autonomous groups in civil society, in the political system. It is mainly based on the relationship between the leader and the people. So what was the starting in democratization processes of a strong civil society, it became weak. It has been on purpose weakened. The surprise now is that October 7 and the war raised a quite important number of NGOs that they are mixing pro-Palestine stance, anti-Zionist stance, trade unions, different trade unions, human rights groups, etc., in a whole and an overall package that comes in a very interesting question: how this war and October 7 provided them an opportunity to regain visibility. In any case, beside this question that I think in different terms should be posed also to Europe, right? What we now see is a, you can say, melange, a combination of different sectors, NGOs, groups, that they are becoming a very important factor as the critical protest towards Israel, towards the war. And in a moment, I will say some details of how it comes and how it has been coordinated, its efforts, with other Latin American countries in different spheres, not only. So I would say that despite the greater conceptual awareness that we have regarding the complexity of anti-Semitism, we need more clarity regarding its interaction with anti-Zionism, anti-Israelism, and critique of Israel. I consider that, again, I repeat, anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, anti-Israelism, critique of Israel are singular processes, yet they are overlapping at the meaning-making level. One sense reinforces, one may reinforce the other I insist, at the meaning-making level. However, the war has radicalized the discourses and tends to blur the war, mainly the war, to blur the limits between one and the other. I can't have enough time, but I would say that mainly my research has focused on the building of the negative representation of the Jew in Mexico and Latin America. And its building has been through tropos, right, to fixed images of the Jew, not only of the Jew, but also in relations to the other dimension I referred. And what we can see is that that's not the same phenomenon. It's not the Hydra phenomenon, right, of the same monster that lurks with different, no. In different senses and contexts, there is a repetition of images and negative tropos of the Jews. They serial, right, God killer, but we shouldn't be surprised. In the States also it has appeared, right? Jesus and the contemporary Palestine. I refer to AOC, right? Alexander Ocasio-Cortez, right? A very central figure in the States, but also we find it in Mexico and other Latin Americans. Jesus was not a Jew, was a Palestine, composed of money grabbers and money lovers. I'll come to in a moment to see the images today regarding Jews and partially also Israel. Rich, powerful, selfish, immoral, alien, unrooted, Jewish world domination, world conspiracy, and gradually, after the 6-Day War in Mexico and Latin America, and today with a new strength, Zionism equated to racism, the subject of Zionist lobby, Israel as a Zionist state, the matrix power of colonialism. So criticism of Israel, as we know, is not anti-Semitic in essence or motivation. However, both overlap if prejudice rhetoric or images drawing from old myths or tropos, as I referred, come together. We see today a very new phenomenon, the legitimate criticism of Israel and its policies in light of the long-lasting Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It has different expression. The sources can be political for Jews and non-Jews, ethical, pretending universal, and the outcome can be different, public pressure, but we also see that we have to be very careful to differentiate in between the critique of the current government, the coalition, etc., and the way it appears as a hostility toward Israel and toward the Jewish people. As I said, a radicalization of discourse, new threshold of acceptance or rejection of a prejudice, the rejection of Jewish reality, and this we can see to new convergences among different sectors, different people. And if I may, I don't know, Youval, you're counting the time. Please let me know if I am still in the 20 minutes. No, I'm laughing.
Oh,
It's okay. Okay,
yeah,
I'll try to.
you can have,
Okay, so if I quote, the previous topos that I referred as Dayside, etc., were built through decades of Jewish presence in the region, in the continent, and before that, we know about anti-Semitism without Jews. Now, what is going on, I try to synthesize different expressions of the movements. It's not only the street movement, but declarations. And it's interesting, they are continental also and global. So the ongoing massacre in the Gaza Strip by the terrorist state of Israel signifies a loop in the policy of aggression and ethnic cleansing. We are facing nothing less than a genocide. Previous of all the idea of bringing Israel accusing of genocide or the polemics in the state, right? Then another, the action, and that's very important. Now, we can imagine how Jews and the Jewish community can feel, as you describe, both of you, as introduced, what this current situation brings to all of us when the action of the Palestinian Resistance Organization on October 7, resistance organization, right? So it was a reaction, it was reactive, and it was a blow to the policy of the Zionist state of Israel, and here Latin America grows and appears, Western imperialism in the region. This connection in between imperialism, colonialism, racism, and Zionism became in Latin America a sort of cultural code following the expression, the conception of Shulamit Volkov, right? It's a cultural code that one brings. Today, Zionism became a sort of transnational package that doesn't need the others because it implies it. And it is related to the long years, long-lasting conflict with Palestine. So the accusation of the state of Israel as illegitimate, ethnic cleansing, the theft of lands, the key to attract trade unions with the anti-imperialist rhetoric. So what they are looking is to approach a sort of, but I'm bringing together different expressions, right? So
Can you sum up just?
Yes. So if we would expect that the war should be connected to October 7, what we see here that the periodization goes back to 1948, and also previous in expressions in the academia and in the street, of course, of a Balfour Declaration. So what we see here is finally this conception. For this, what I'm bringing is that Latin America became a scenario where gradually the critique of Israel became part of a more comprehensive package, right? One other point that I would suggest, and I don't have the time, is to see where in the academia, not only in Latin America, but also in the States and Europe, several theoretical approaches have reinforced a double situation. One, they open new horizons to analyze the third world or the global south, and simultaneously, they reproduce a prejudice conception of Jews, Israel, and Zionism. This, I think, is one of the main challenges we face. I mean, I would say post- and decolonial theories, intersectionality, critical race theory have open potential routes to approach the global south, but they reproduce severe prejudices vis-a-vis Jews. This is one, vis-a-vis Jews and vis-a-vis Israel. And this is a field that we have to consider carefully, right? How we work with our colleagues and our students, right? And again, I say it's not only Latin America, this situation. First, the whitening of the Jew as a representative of the West, and therefore all the sins of the West committing to this unseen history, right, of coloniality. So I hope I was I was clear enough. Sorry for my overtime. And in the conversation, we can approach again several points. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was extremely important, I think, and to really you have shown exactly how the political map has been changing, and from a local perspective, from Latin America, and specifically in Mexico, and what you call how the war radicalized the differences and actually advanced the political discourse in directions that are very troubling. From the one hand, and the other hand, it leaves an entire area to question how the local communities have how they live it, how they respond, how can they respond to it, and both locally and also globally, and how can we construct or participate in this discourse in order to shift the discussion in to have a more to radicalize the discourse. So thank you. Sergio, please, you're next.
Okay. First of all, again, thank you for the invitation. It's a very pleasure to be here. I'm lucky because I had the previous Judit that she gave nice pictures about Latin America that is in general, but I can follow her in some situations in Brazil with some little changes, can I say like this? But and I prepare myself according to my background. I'm not academic. I'm not involved in the academic field, so I'm the executive director of the umbrella Jewish organization CONIB. So I'm gonna share with you what happened in Brazil since the fatigueful event. Okay, so what we doing in our community and what we are experiencing in this country. So this is that I prepare myself. So the Brazilian Jewish community, it's perplexed like everyone else in the world. The situation in Brazil is absolutely unprecedented. Brazil is ranked as one of the least anti-Semitic countries in the world, I can guarantee, in terms of incidents. Historically, at the time of the Second War, there was a government that was allied with the Nazis for a while, leading by Getúlio Vargas, that's the name, the president. But due to pragmatic circumstances, he changed his position. At the moment, we had some restriction to the entry of the Jews in Brazil through secret circulars issued by diplomacy. Brazil has always assimilated immigrants very well. We can say like this is a kind of characteristics of this country. After the terrible period of slavery, which Black people, that was very complicated in our history. Brazil still has racist features and its composition, and right now is facing the war period. There's an acute polarization between right and left, especially in the last 6 years. With the growth of the social media, we have also an exponential growth of hate speech. Our biggest challenge at the moment has been dealing with the anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist manifestations of the current government on the left-wing mass living in Brazil. Many of them are ignorant and they don't know what's the difference. It's the issue of anti-Semitism. It's a new word for the majority, and some or other are instigate the importation of the conflict into the Brazilian scenario. This is a new phenomenon in this country. I'd like to share what we have done in few words since October 7, when we realized the severity of the crisis that we had in Israel. We established to create a crisis committee to address the situation and work in the follow direction, government and the political relations. So we made many efforts to encourage expression of support and subsidize the congressman, because we arise many things and they don't know. They ask they asked us help to address the issue. It was so new because of the new situation. We established the guidelines to the federal government and other public institutions to realize that Brazil carries a tradition of peaceful coexistence and should not import conflict and tension from other society, country. We follow, this is the Brazilian tradition of the diplomatic tradition. And such guidelines include the clarification, the difference between the terrorist group Hamas and the Palestinian people, and so make clear that's the solidarity with the Palestinian people. And so we open a special force to the press. So we start to talk with the main professional media outlets in this country, and building channels through new contacts, and make a lot of create a lot of opportunity to make press relations, no? And we start to study what's going on in the social media. That's very strong in Brazil. The social media, Brazil, this country is working through the social media. I can say like this. So we hiring a social media monitoring company to understand the tendency, what's going on. We created a kind of real guerrilla. I don't know exactly this is the right word in English. Guerrilla was created to combat the contextualization of the conflict, the anti-Semitism, and overall the hate speech. So we produce a lot of materials. We import some materials from many places, and interlocution with the main content platforms to mitigate the damage caused by anti-Semitism, erroneous and distorted publication. And in terms of the community, we strengthen the monitoring and the alert in terms of the safety of the alert status of all entities that are part of the ecosystem of the Brazilian Jewish community. We have around 250 entities spread out in this country. We had the contact with the federal and state public authorities that we do have a connection, but we visit them. We create mechanisms in order to hide the level of the security. And also we open a special task force in terms of legal, so to scan for anti-Semitic acts and examine their eligibility for legal action. We receive such a lot. We hire like 1,000% of the new situations arise after the episode, and also we create procedure for many places because we have our community spread out, and we share best practice in order to make this process very effective. And also we take care of the Jewish community, so we had some meetings or guidance and addressing their needs, sharing content, communication, so everything that they suppose, no? In the issue of the question that you asked, no, the view of field of knowledge, marking a transformation in the way Jews in their countries define, express their Jewishness and their relationship with. I think so. Historically, the Brazilian Jewish community has always been very identified with the state of Israel. At least I can say that over the last 50 years that we have documents, and I am feeling this. Here, the influence and the presence of the state of Israel in the life of the Brazilian Jewish community has always been present through school, youth movement, international organization, Israeli organization. We have many organizations operate here. And we know that the anti-Semitism and war in Israel tend to mobilize and unite the Jewish people, even accept some difference. The Brazilian Jewish community has never been so mobilized is that this time there are two wars: the concrete war of weapons and battle on the field that the Israeli are experiencing and living this, and there's another war, that's the war of the narrative, that this is spread out all over the world. And we have a hard and fleeting opportunity to maintain mobilization, increase education process, and fight against Jewish illiteracy in some cases. This is something that we realize that in our cases, we have many people from the Jewish community that ask us, demanding from us materials, papers to explain to their friends, to their social media, and this is it's an interesting phenomenon that we have in our community. Relating to the third questions, can we have an active role in the way the events are recorded and remembered, and how can this affect our position in view of the war? We don't need to worry about it so much. This is a great trauma, unfortunately, for the Jewish people. Obviously, the Israeli, we have a much greater impact of the issue due to the fall of the paradigms that have been restored to this situation. Traumas do not come out of our collective unconsciousness. This is the program of happened in Israel only revived our traumas. This is the feeling that we have in our small groups. No, the Brazilian Jewish community is experiencing a turning point in its history. We have been here since the beginning, 1950. And a lot of has emerged in our society, which has widened, has now appeared. We are 100,000 Jews living in this country, in a country with 205 million inhabitants. So that's we have to be, and we have good connection historically in this country, no problem at all. I think that any government and any coalition can be criticized. It's okay. The policies defined by a certain government can be questioned or repudiated in some case, even if the government has been democratically elected. What cannot be questioned or discussed is the existence of the state of Israel, the legitimacy. This is our limit. This is that we decide when we analyze if you're gonna sue, if you're gonna make some kind of note to express in the media. This is our limit for us as a Jewish community. We are careful here in Brazil to analyze the limits and borders, so not to banalize the issue of the anti-Semitism. We don't want to have, this is everything is anti-Semitism. This is not true. In our country, the topic of the anti-Semitism, as I mentioned before, is new. There is a lack of understanding, enlightenment, and literacy, and this is something that we're gonna launch this in the end of the May as an education platform in order to help the Brazilian society to understand what's the difference. It's part of a special project that we're gonna launch that's against the anti-Semitism, the hate speech, and the extremism. We just made a joint a partnership with ADL, that's an American organization, and we've realized that people don't know, people don't understand, and they are demanding a lot from us. So it's a good opportunity for us to explain and to explain to the media, to the public opinion. Final words: the Jewish people have the same destiny, and it doesn't not matter whether they are in Israel or outside of Israel. We have to be closely aligned and united as much as possible. That's my opinion. That because together we feel strong, not necessarily we are stronger, but at least we feel, and we need to address our battles. We cannot deceive ourselves. It's just the tip of the iceberg. This is the perception that we have at least in Brazil, because until 5 years ago, we don't have any cases that incident of anti-Semitism, and now became this issue became a rise in our society. So this is more or less that I'd like to share. I'm open to be more specific with questions. Thank you for the opportunity.
Many thanks, Sergio. I think that this is extremely helpful, and also, you know, it's something that we can discuss, and about this project of mobilization that you described, and the way that Jewish communities can react together in forming some kind of an answer in order to educate and to have a change. And this corresponds with what Judit said beforehand. It's like the other, and it raises more questions about, you know, how the local Jewish communities, and especially the local people, how they experience this mobilization, what feedbacks do you get, etc. But we can all discuss this later. I now invite Valeria, please, for your take on the subject. Thank you. You're muted. Yeah.
First of all, thank you, Youval, for the invitation. Thank you. I don't see the other person. It's very, thank you, Roni. It's an honor to share this panel with Sergio, Judit, and Adrian. Well, let's begin. It's a sad honor. I would prefer not to be in this type of panel if there was any possibility of not having a word like the one we have now. But under the circumstances, thank you for inviting me. So it's a very emotional topic for me. I have family and friends in Israel, friends like Adrian, and most of you are in Israel. I'm currently in Chile. So to begin the analysis, I would have to say that we need to understand where the Chilean Jewish community was located at the moment the war began. So we had an election in 2021 when a young man from a left-wing coalition came to power. His name is Gabriel Boric. He's the current president of Chile. And he ran against a far right-wing politician. So many people voted for Boric, for the left wing, for the current president, to avoid voting for a person who is a Nazi descent and who has many other flaws. Since the beginning of his candidacy, he began to say that he believed that Israel was a genocidal state. That he said that in an interview with the Jewish community. So the first issue that we saw is that there's no channel to talk with the president about these topics. So this was reinforced when in 2022, there was a change in the ambassador from Israel in Chile. And the president of the country denied the reception of the diplomatic credentials. So the ambassador was invited to present his credentials at the government palace, and later he was denied not the entrance, but he was not received by the president. All because there was a statement that there was a boy who was killed this was September 2022. So we have seen several signs from the current government of Chile that they don't appreciate Israel or Israeli presence or Israeli in general. The other important point that we need to take into account is that current government began 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, in March 2022. And since then, the Jewish community has requested the opportunity to take a meeting just to say, hello, congratulations on winning the election. And until today, the current government the current president hasn't received the Jewish community, the leadership of the Jewish community. So when we have the events of October 7, with the ongoing information about what happened, because at the beginning we received information that there were 40 people killed, that there was a small entrance, and later the numbers began to increase. And then later we had the information about the Nova Party, and then later everything that we know now. It took 2 days to the president to say something, and his words were a response to a Twitter by a congresswoman. She criticized what happened in Israel by Gaza, and the only message of the president was, I agree 100%. He wasn't able to present his own idea or empathy towards what happened in Israel. This coming from a president who is actively involved in Twitter is more noticeable. If it was someone who was not in Twitter 1 or 2 a day, it would have been, okay, he didn't tweet. I actually, for the first day, I thought that he was traveling to China because he was going to China during those days. So I thought maybe he was traveling to China at the moment. He wasn't. So it was just an innocent, hopeful expression that I had as a human being. And after the bombardments by Israel towards Gaza began, the government began to issue several statements against what was going on, against the bombing to the hospital, against the bombing of the refugee camps, against the bombings of everything. It was constant. So there's a sharp difference between what happened when Israel was attacked than when Israel was retaliating Hamas, or events after October 7. And that's like a thorn in the Jewish community at the moment, a thorn that is reaping our essence. Why? Because for those of us who voted for this president, because I was not going to vote for a president who was right-wing with Nazi descendant, I was not going to vote for that. And many people, many Jews voted for this president. And suddenly it's not only that his rhetoric during the candidacy was evident to be not only anti-Israeli, but in certain terms anti-Semitic, we began to feel orphaned. And many Jews in Chilean Jewish community, especially those on the center, on the left, feel an orphanhood from the institutions that have, where they used to participate, political parties, feminist organizations, human rights organizations, where you had condemnation, rightful condemnation of everything that can be happening and that can be violating human rights, except if you're Jewish. So one expression of that situation was evident a couple of weeks ago. So probably some of you know that in Chile we have a big number of Palestinian descents in the country. Some say that is the biggest outside of the Middle East. I don't want to enter the numbers because people disagree on what are the real numbers. But one of those descendants is an important major of a part of Santiago, Recoleta, and he was a candidate for the primary election of the coalition that is currently on government. So he ran against the current president. And this major has had a very anti-Semitic rhetoric since he has been in politics. And so he participated in the launch of a book that was called Zionism, the Ideology That Kills, made by a friend of him. And he was saying, when he participated in the presentation, he was saying, or he was stating, there's no way that a Jewish person can be in the left because Jews believe that they are the chosen people. So they don't see the others as equals. So there was a polemic coming from this perspective where the fact that you can be from the left was denied when you are Jewish. And after that, one group created a letter stating that that was not true, and that letter received 800 signatures. We need to remember we are a small community in Chile. There's about between 20 and 22,000 Jews currently living in the country. And not many of the Jews define themselves in political terms, and not many of them define themselves as leftist. So to receive a letter, to have 800 people, not saying that they are from the left, but saying that Jews, we have the rights to decide whether we want to be from the left, or we want to be from the right, or we want to be of any political color that we want. That was an important issue for the local Jewish community. That's mostly what I would say about the current Jewish situation. About the following questions, I'm not completely sure what an answer would be, in the sense that I'm not completely sure if there's going to be a different way that we understand the event of October 7, that we could recast it in a different narrative. Because as Sergio mentioned before, what we have in Chile is one version of the struggle for narratives about where Zionism, Jews, Israel is located in this current situation. I would say that this is going to be also a period after October 7 when local Jews have felt abandoned by in part of the government, or the official government, in part of the political parties, where only one political party, the Socialist Party, was the one who wrote a letter or sent a message to the people who belong to that party. Also the sense that in certain terms of insecurity, where the ways of living as a Jew has been challenged, has been made more fragile. In the sense, I would say that maybe the impacts would be similar to what we have in Chile, as the memories and the remembrance of what happened in Argentina, in AMIA, in 1994, that some sort of daily life activities change the way they were made, and that it adds an additional memory of violence that is not recognized as such. So, yeah. And the line between criticism of Israel and anti-Semitism, I would always put it in the sense that if you ask from Israel something that you're not asking from the government, that you need to check from where you're asking that. Like if you're asking Israel to be the only one who respects human rights, or you demand that Israel respects human rights when you are not asking that from, let's say, China, Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, there must be something else there. I'm not saying that everyone who denies that, who doesn't criticize those governments is anti-Semitic, but my radar always clicks or always makes a beep when the Jewish state is being asked something that is not being asked from other countries. And I do believe that we can have an active role in the way that events are going to be remembered. I'm not sure which one is the way, in the sense that maybe if we, as Jews, as academics, start to present these issues in different platforms, let's say social media, conferences at the universities, there might be more resonance to some people, or it might be a record of something that happened that was saying, it's not that everyone in Chile was saying that it was a genocide or a genocide what happened in Gaza, but there was something different. I'm not sure how that transformation could materialize at the moment. I think that even though we are not living in Israel, that we are living a similar post-traumatic recovery. Maybe not in the same dimension, but certainly with a common shared feeling of the events. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valeria. That was extremely stimulating, and I think that I, at least, am now much more informed about the difficulties of the community and the difficult situation in which they find themselves within the local politics, and also vis-a-vis the general political map and the way it changed and the way it's going to change, etc. And I think that it gives us much information to think about, and also to compare it with the different aspects that Sergio and Judit have raised, in order to think ahead. And I think that you, and as well as Sergio and Judit, together have raised this aspect. And I think that from an Israeli point of view, we are experiencing, now I think of it, that we're experiencing similar, not only in in relation to what you said there at your last sentences about the post-traumatic way of experiencing, I think, but also in general questions about what is the future of this relationship between Zionism and Judaism, and the way that it conditions and it determines our identity and our political situation, and the way that we position ourselves politically. This is something that we need to think, I think, together. So I invite our last speaker, Adrian, please, to give his point of view.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Youval. Thank you to all of you. And I have 15 minutes.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Yes, okay. So I will start giving you a context in Argentina, then I will comment on a series of facts, and at the end, but also at the beginning, I will talk about anti-Zionism, which I do believe that is the main issue of our times, and in this particular context. And I am glad to hear what my colleagues said, because I am sure that we have to continue having this kind of discussions about anti-Zionism. Okay, first of all, when this Black Shabbat happened in Israel, by the way, I am in Haifa, but I am absolutely in contact with Argentina, and a privileged observer, maybe because a lot of friends send me a lot of news, and I am very, very connected to the reality there. So when the attack took place, it was just the day before the presidential debate in Argentina, because Argentinians were going to vote their new president. And so it was a possibility to see and to listen to what every candidate had to say. And as Judit said, in Argentina, as in Mexico, the idea that Zionism is a kind of imperialism, and Hamas or whatever Palestinian movement is automatically connected to a liberation movement is a reality. Maybe since the 70s, it's like that. So in that debate, it doesn't make any difference if a candidate is the favorite or is a far left person who is not going to take to receive a couple of votes, but all of them have the same time. So it was absolutely shocking for large segments of society that the woman who was the candidate from the far left, actually a Jewish woman, she supported the Palestinian cause without saying anything about Israel. The rest of the candidates, of course, were against violence and supporting Israel. A very important thing to comment about that debate and our current president in Argentina is that Javier Milei, the new president, a person who defined himself as libertarian and let's say is a far right person, if we want to simplify because we don't have a lot of time. He sides with extreme capitalism and all that. He started to be very sympathetic with the Jewish culture. He has a rabbi, actually the new ambassador in Israel is his personal rabbi. He said he wants to convert to Judaism. He wants to move the embassy of Argentina to Jerusalem. So what I am explaining is that the link between imperialism, Judaism, and rich people is going to be stronger in Argentina for this administration. Leftist people, people who have no idea about what is Israel, they are going to start connecting Israel with this president, which is cutting the budgets and is making very aggressive reforms, which are going to be very hard. They are already being very hard on the population. Okay, so some facts. In Argentina, the traditional institutions, Jewish institutions, they reacted as usual with communication in the newspapers, on TV, supporting Israel. There was an interesting demonstration organized by different people in the stairs, in the entrance of the law faculty of the University of Buenos Aires, like 6,000 people in solidarity with Israel. That was nice, let's say. There were artists in Argentina. We have a community of 160,000 Jews according to Halacha, according to Halachic origin. Let's say they have a Jewish mother, but if we pay attention to the law of return, the number jumps to 220,000. This to give you an idea, and 80% of them are in the capital, in Buenos Aires. And the most interesting interventions I watched on TV, they were made not by politicians, not by Jewish representatives from the institutions, but by artists. In particular, two artists. The number one comedian, he's called Roberto Moldavsky, and in the 80s he was living in Israel and he studied sociology at the Hebrew University. Now he does stand-up and he works on TV, on radio, and he was on the news program, and he made a very honest and personal account, and I think it was very, very good. There were some other journalists that they are Jews and they were supporting Israel, which I think it was a very positive contribution to the Zionist cause, to the Jewish cause, to Israel. Because I am a Zionist, I am Israeli, I am a Jew, and I don't have any problem with that. But having said that, I think we are losing the battle. We are being defeated by anti-Zionism, and the new arm in the hands of anti-Zionism, of course, first of all, is globalization and internet and the TV channels, satellite channels, the Iranian channels in Spanish, the Venezuelan TV broadcasted for the whole world, Al Jazeera. They have a systematic anti-Zionism propaganda professionally designed. For example, there was a documentary about how COVID was a conspiracy created by Zionism. So, and these channels, they love to show when Jewish people are defining themselves as Jewish, but not Zionist, are even against Zionism. They love to do that, and this is the new arm they are using, and altogether with the accusation of genocide that is becoming a serious issue, in my opinion. So some facts on the institutional level, on TV, and on politics. Now, about people, regular Jews. A lot of people, friends of mine, they told me that they were very surprised to find very hard reactions. They did not use the word anti-Semitic, but they told me people I never expect were going to support what Hamas have done. They actually were supporting that. And I find myself that I cannot talk to these people anymore. These friends of mine who are academicians, progressive people who work in the University of Buenos Aires. So anti-Zionism is very strong in very small leftist circles, but these circles are somehow ideologically dominant in certain places or circles of society. And there is another thing, a rationalization of supporting Hamas or accusing with the terrorist strategy, which I have been listening in radio or in TV by supporters of what in Argentina is called the National Popular Camp, which is not the left, but let's say the left side of society, those who say they support the workers and they support the unemployed people, and this the Peronist party, people who support the Peronist party, the anti-Zionist position became hegemonic, and some of their communication people, they are starting to warn against the very pro-United States or pro-Israel foreign policy that the new government is pursuing, or at least talking about, because they say, hey, come on, we had 2 terrorist attacks here in Buenos Aires in the 90s. So again, the idea of the 90s, the neoliberal economic program and siding with the US is coming again to the political debate. So at the end, these people kind of suggest don't get involved with Israel because it's dangerous, which at the end of the day, it is the same of giving up to terrorism. Now, there were events and demonstrations, but the new thing, I mean, Jewish people trying to express solidarity with Israel and to fight for the minds and the souls of the people. And I was glad to see a lot of young people, by the way, not only from Argentina, but from South America in general, on social media, on TikTok. I became addicted to TikTok some nights, and I am glad to find some very well-educated and motivated young Jews, or not that young, maybe young professionals, maybe not coming from history or from the academia, a psychologist, a guy who is very young, maybe he's a student, I have no idea what is he studying, and they were fighting the comments on the social networks. So I think this is something not only to remember, but I think as Sergio said in the case of Brazil, that he hired a company to monitor the social networks and to see what was going on. I think Zionism has to take care about the social media and to organize our fighters, our people who are there, start trying to give an answer, because a lot of people are really ignorant. Imagine that in Argentina now people are suffering poverty and hunger and unemployment. They don't have time to read a book about anti-Zionism or the history of the Middle East. So most of the people have no idea. Now, I am moving close to the end, and I want to focus on anti-Zionism. And I agree with Judit that we can differentiate about anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, anti-Israelism. In my view, we can make all sorts of difference in theory, and we could write books, articles. Actually, is something that I am more and more interested in studying. However, when I see the political movements and I see the political fight, I don't see any difference nowadays. Maybe the difference is that anti-Zionism can politely invite Jews to join their battle against Israel. And this is why I again say these Iranian channels, Venezuelan channels, Al Jazeera from Qatar, they love to show Jews who declare themselves against Israel. And I want to give a couple of examples, and I will finish with a story which also includes some episodes from Argentina in recent days. One of the similarities, and this is why I say is a new form of anti-Semitism. No one in Argentina is going to push a person of Italian ancestry to make a statement about the government of the Italian far right, let's say, Meloni. No one is going to push a guy from Spanish ancestry to give a statement about the Spanish Civil War or whatever. But it is legitimate, and people do push Jews to explain what's going on in Israel. And this is why some of them in the left find at the end more comfortable to side against Israel. And I found an amazing case, which this is an editorial by a journalist who he specializes in economy. He works in a radio in an FM in Argentina, But when this happened, he made an editorial talking about what was going on here. And it is for a psychologist specialist to work with that editorial, because the guy said, well, this is not my topic, but I feel the need to talk about this because people ask me what I think because I am a Jew. And then at the end, he finishes with all the slogans that anti-Zionism had created. He said that Gaza is like the Warsaw Ghetto, and if that was not enough, in another of his programs, he invited a person, and this is the story I will use to close. He invited a philosophy teacher who was a teacher in a Jewish school, in Martin Buber Jewish School. It is a primary and secondary school in Buenos Aires. This person who used to teach their philosophy wrote an article in a digital magazine against Israel with all the slogans, of course, in favor of peace, of course, but with all the slogans and commonplaces from anti-Zionism. I think this guy is very interesting in the sense that he used to live in Israel, and actually because his parents migrated from Argentina, but then the family went back to Argentina, and the guy tried to study at the university in Israel, so he came back when he was 18, and when he was 18 here in Israel, he found that he did not fit the society. So in the article, he criticized that the society is very militarized, and he said, when I tried to go there to the university, I found that because I did not go to the army, I did not have friends, I did not have the experience of the army, so the guy did not fit in society. But his personal experience was taken as a legitimation for his critique against Israel. And so in the interview, the other journalist who already had made the editorial, and this guy who I found very ignorant about history, they were telling a lot of things that were really, really not educated statements. But this guy was presented as a teacher of philosophy and a kind of victim, because in the school, of course, decided to suspend the person because, of course, it's a Zionist school. They have the right to choose the kind of teachers they want. And in that school, there was an incident not very clear. Some brick was thrown against a window and broke glass. So it was not clear if it was typical vandalization of a big city, or if it was connected to what is going on here in Israel, in Gaza. And so I think the main issue nowadays is anti-Zionism. I think myself, I have a lot to learn and a lot to study about it. But as a community, as a people, we need to keep talking and discussing about that. And I think I said everything I wanted to say according to my notes. And thank you very much. And I am open to questions and opinions. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. That was fascinating, everything that you said, and it brought another perspective, another point of view to the table, and also you paved another way of thinking ahead, and to think about what we can do. And actually, you brought a few very, very instructive examples, I think, that in a way answers some of the questions that the previous panelists have put, also including also their ideas I would just, we don't have much time, but we do have the time for a few questions and discussion. So first, please, Roni, and then Judith. Roni, please. You are muted, Roni.
So thank you everyone for this fascinating presentations. I wanted to ask Judith and maybe the other panelists. You said, I think that intellectuals in maybe I think that you related mainly to intellectuals in Mexico and Latin America. They still relate to the Hamas as a resistant movement, as a Palestinian resistant movement. So my question is, didn't the atrocities that were made by Hamas, which left such an impact on the Israeli society, even on people who see themselves as supporting the peace process, are looking for a solution, and with the Palestinians, people who are part of the left in Israel, I mean, the atrocities, the way that they raped women and what they did to children, you know all the stories, of course. I mean, that left such a traumatic impression on the Israeli society, and also for people on the left who began to ask themselves, are these the people that we are looking for making a peace with them? You know, that they even killed in the kibbutzim people who supported the peace process. I think that many leaders in Europe who came to Israel and even in Europe and the United States and saw the pictures, they were affected considerably by the pictures that they saw and the atrocities. And my question is, did all this left any impression on people who still see the Hamas as they saw before Palestinians' resistant movements? I mean, don't they see them in a different perspective now? Okay.
Judith, please. You are muted.
Well, my intervention originally I asked, I will refer, but let me first answer your question. It is extremely complicated. And an example, a synthetic example, would be the discussion that Havai Luz is holding today with so many intellectuals from the left, be it Zizek or the others. So here we have a very complicated picture, because for the post-colonial and decolonial discourse, there is a legacy of a left and Marxist tradition where violence has been part of the liberation movements, right? And you see it today in the Palestinian intellectual, if we can say, sectors. So I will tell you, there are people that they still ask if people means colleague with name and family name, that they still put in doubt what happened in October 7. So from one side, there is a recognition that liberation would come through violence. And what is October 7 compared with what's going on today in Gaza? And then you have all the chain of arguments regarding proportionality, right? So this is a very interesting subject that I would like really to further analyze, because it has to do with how do you relate to influential people and influential theories just discovering where the limits come when the Jewish question, the Zionist question, the state of Israel appear. Brilliant minds that they recover this sort of blindness, if I may say, regarding the reality of Judaism also, of Jews, etc. So this is one point. The horrors were not interpreted by all of them this way, right? And then you have in Latin America, of course, but not only, the different ways of discussing, for example, the legacy of Frantz Fanon, right? Where is violence here and how we relate? So I think that your question deserves a more detailed response, right? Or dialogue regarding, because this is a very important point. Now, let me add two things.
Excuse me, Judith, let me
Sorry.
add something that I think that's important to understand.
Sorry.
The Latin American mindset. I'm going to say on behalf of Latin America, I don't know if I know. I can say about the Brazil, but I think that we can make at least Mexico and Colombia in the same situation, that we have huge violence, urban violence in these countries, in Brazil and Mexico and Colombia. And so this is creates some kind of different perspective for the intellectual. I mean, when they compare the numbers of the death, and it's something incredible. So this is make a little bit confused, a little more. The situation in Brazil, it's not like exactly like it's a little bit different. The majority of the academic people, they understand what happened in Israel and they defend. Even the government, they had a statement, the Brazilian government at the beginning, the first statement was that Israel has the right to defend themselves about what happened. But I agree with what Judith say, that there are some people that after 1 week, the moment that Israel start to retaliate and became the war inside of Gaza, they changed completely the narrative. So at the first week, we still have the empathy of the Brazilian society and the academic people, even to our government. But after 1 week, it appeared. So our job was to find ways to reconnect and to put the real picture to the Brazilian society in order to influence the public opinion. So just to add, sorry, Judy, to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. Well, it happens, we display, we unfold several, because you could imagine that for Latin Americans, Hamas could have been interpreted of, let's say, how the narco, right, and the failed state regarding areas where there is no control on violence could be parallel. But I didn't refer to that, Sergio. I referred mainly to the argument of proportion in between October 7 and the war. But I think it's very delicate. I am convinced that we do need to approach a very serious conversation with all these theories that have such an important impact on youth and universities. I would add, all the discussion in the States that has gone around the elitist university leaves aside the problem of 90% of the new generation that study in the States that are not known the way they are studied. And here you have all this change in the humanities and social science. You may say, a sort of cultural climate, right, that comes. Then I want to refer to what Adrian mentions regarding mass media and internet. Let us just take into account two things, because I have here facts also regarding the analysis that has been made of the behavior in mass media. But I agree with a very important insight, right, by several researchers, that they see the way that how through internet there are several groups, fragmented groups, that create a collective identity in a sense of a community or a subculture of racist, of global racism. And this can't be overlooked, right? They find there exactly what we are, because they find the immediacy, they find the anonymity, right? And if you compare Argentina, Mexico, Colombia, Chile, and Venezuela, you'll discover what percentage you have in Facebook, Twitters, etc., which is, we don't have the time here, but it is very enlightening to see the way it became a space to express all this. And since the war and until December, I don't have figures for January, we have 24,000 millions of mentions of the conflict in Gaza, right? Which is substantive compared to the previous year. And we have the, well, also we should go and see, again, just to be very cautious in our analysis, the percentage of people that, that are into social media, right? And there is, you can see how it reproduces the main topics that had to be with Gaza, genocide, aggression, war, hospital, Israeli army, etc., etc. I don't want to just take more time, but here we have a field of research, and I am entering it to discover also not only the immediate political use of this, but also how it's part of this. You were surprised, Adrian, who said you find people that are really very intelligent. Exactly, we find there a subculture also, besides all the booths that are organized by this. Well, I think that so many interesting points have been raised. Let us remember that Milei, that today is this incognita, right, is very close to Trump and to Netanyahu, right? So there is also a way to see political affinities, right? Which is very important to take into account. And that's it. Well, I agree. On the symbolic level of violence, we are losing the battle, because we do see Jewish youth that are afraid of going with the Magen David or Chofshim Kippah or to wear the kippah, vis-a-vis all these display of Palestinian symbols that are continentally organized. Chile has a group of artists, 15 artists in this workshop related to the Palestinian Club, that have designed impressive posters that are just covering all the manifestation and protest and universities in Latin America. Sorry, my apologies if I took again the time.
No, not at all. It was fascinating, and I think it exactly what you said. I mean, it raises so much, so many points to think about, and to think ahead. I would like to invite you to two of the audience, Valeria, and after that, Rosalie. Please, just unmute yourself. Yes.
Yes. So, hello. My name is Valeria. I was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I live in Israel for a long, long time, more than 35 years. But I studied Hebrew in a Jewish school, and when I was 15, we came to Israel. And when I talk to my family in Argentina, they don't talk about anti-Semitism at all. They talk just about the economical situation, that's all. And they are very happy that Milei was elected. They don't very happy. Now is the summer, and they went to the sea like all the Jewish families do in the summer, like I did in the summer. So I wanted to understand what is really going on in Buenos Aires now. Maybe because it's summer and the universities are closed and the schools are closed, so that's also influence. And it happened in October, and October is like 2 months before we finish school. So it's very interesting what you say. And also has a friend, because most of the people in Argentina are Catholics, but I have a friend that she's not Catholic, and we are in touch all the time, and she pray for the state of Israel all the time. So I would like to understand what is really going on, because I thought that all the anti-Semitism that we saw in the campus is something that in North America or in Europe, but not in Latin America, because in Argentina, as you say, Dr. Krupnik, the people are suffering from the economical situation, and they don't have time to think, I think, about something else. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that also it relates to what we heard in the previous panel from the United States about different kinds of. We hear mainly the most radical voices, and we tend to think about putting emphasis on that. And I think there were people from campuses who said that the picture are much more. Not varied, but I mean that we get a very specific and particular picture, and the case is much more complicated when you see it from the inside. So thank you for bringing also this point of view, the non-Jewish point of view, the non-Jewish local point of view that we haven't discussed much. Where we discussed the map, we discussed below the bottom and the up, and the above, but we didn't discuss the dynamics from below and the things that are concerned with Jewish communities and other communities locally. Rosalie, please.
Thank you. And first of all, congratulations to the organizers of the panel for what has been really a fascinating discussion. And congratulations to all the panelists, among whom are several friends of mine from Mexico and Chile and Argentina. I just, as a Chilean, I was particularly interested in what Valeria had to say. And I just wanted to understand whether, Valeria, perhaps you can tell me whether I'm right or wrong in thinking that, and what you have said, is that there are two fractures in Chile at the moment. One within the Jewish society or the Jewish community in Chile, which I would say there's almost, we might even say it's a generational crisis, that possibly the older generation thinks in one way and the younger generation thinks differently. And this manifests itself and is probably produced also as a result of a crisis within the younger Jewish generation, who has traditionally aligned with the left. And therefore, now that you are losing, as you said, support within the left, you find yourselves at a loss, both ideologically vis-a-vis the left, and let's say from an identitarian point of view vis-a-vis the Jewish community. And I thought that this is a particularly interesting point that's worthy of discussion. And this issue of the fracture brings me to something that I've been reading about a lot recently and thinking about a lot recently. And this is in relation to young American Jews who no longer accept the same, I'm not going to say blind, but the same support for Israel that older Americans, middle-aged, to older Americans traditionally held towards Israel. In other words, they're willing to make more excuses or to accept some of Israel's failings or excuse them much more than the younger generation, which seems to be a lot more adamant in their commitment to the left, not necessarily informed always, but definitely committed and more susceptible to accepting the dictates, the ideological dictates of their peers, rather than the traditional attitude towards Israel of their elders or of their seniors. Thank you.
May I?
Sure.
Thank you, Rosalie, for your question. I would say that the divide is not between young and not so young. Mostly because you will find people who are from the leftist Jews across the different Adrian perspectives. Different generations. It's not something of a generation. Is that people who had been traditionally in the left for over 30, 40, 50, 60 years suddenly felt that they were denied and they were criticized for being Jews, or in a certain way left behind or measured by a different standard. On the other side, there are more Jews. There's a tiny group where there are like, before there were like 5, now there are like 10 who define themselves as non-Zionist. What happens is that they usually receive more attention in the media, or their message is being redistributed by the Palestinian social media. So you have that, even though they are very small, and the Jewish community in Chile, just like the one in Brazil, is characterized for being very Zionist. Since the formation of the Jewish community in the early 1920s, for its commitment to a Jewish state in Israel, in the Middle East, now they are being left outside, both outside of the left and then outside of what it's being, of what's something that they have never felt very close to be Jewish, or the type of Jewish community that we have it here in Chile. So that would be the point. It's not only about a generational issue. Also, the new generations, when they go to the university, they will learn about human rights, about feminism, about intersectionality, about decolonization, and they will try to read Israeli reality and Jewish community in Chile with those tools, and those tools are excluding Jews from their own analysis, or at least to be, they are not being considered as a legitimate partners or a legitimate person who dialogues with them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Well, I also have anecdotes. Adrian said that he had anecdotes. So, Rosalie,
maybe we'll end with the anecdote.
So, last week there was a party that's called the Hugging Party. It's a party held by the Communist Party after that it began several years ago, after the return of the exile from the Chilean dictatorship. So this party has become like an event. It's not that only people from the Communist Party go, but mostly people from the left go there. So my husband and I, we decided to torture ourselves and go there and see what was going on. Like, how was the media, what was the message? And in every stand, every single stand, we saw a Palestinian flag. And some of the stands where they had like craftsmanship, craft, you would have tote bags with the flags and the slogan "Free Palestine" and "Stop the Massacre" and things like that. And we have gone before, but this time we went, I was very upset. I didn't want to go, but I have to go because it was like a social experiment. But it was impressive because the cause of the Palestinians have become a common discourse for the people in the left in Chile. Mm-hmm. And there's very difficult, we don't see how we can either expand the presence of Jews in these spaces or to present the Israeli cause as a legitimate cause when the language is being co-opted, when Zionism is being reframed, when Jewish is being reframed, when they speak about the Jewish community in Chile, not as the Jewish community, but as the Zionist community.
Wow.
So that's why at the moment I cannot see how we are going to frame it for the future, because we are living in this moment, in this crisis that we had after October 7th.
I would like to add, yes, I would like to add regarding what you said, that they talk about the Jewish community as the Zionist community. I think this is another feature that makes anti-Zionism the new anti-Semitism, and this is the issue of there is no border, and it is the anti-Zionist who decides who is Zionist and where is the border. So in that regard, I think it's the same of it used to be anti-Semitism.
Yeah. So, and this brings us back to Judith's talk beforehand about the radicalization of the map, and this is the consequences. And actually, it gives us a lot to, well, it shows us the challenge that lies ahead, and we have to respond in a way to not only to that, but only to think how to how to make a change in this discourse in order to be on the active side and not on the responsive side, the passive side. So thank you all for completely fascinating papers. For a completely fascinating panel, for all your extremely thought-provoking, stimulating points of view, and the way that you really presented them in a most engaging way. And without corresponding one with the other, you presented, I think, a complete discourse that is now we can take and then develop further on, and this is exactly what we would like to do in the Koret Center for Jewish Civilization. This is what the Koret Center is for, and so thank you all. I wish all of us better times and better future, and for all the hostages to rapidly come back home or brought back home, because we cannot really go on with our life and plan plans without them being here with us. And for all of you, many thanks for joining us, and we will look forward to working with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.